Chapter 2. Boss and Former Boss. Raikkonen heaved a sigh as he returned to his room, which at the moment was a chamber of the administrative building that he had appropriated as his living quarters. "Is this purely about making my life hard?" he muttered, shucking off his sand and mud-covered outfit. It was quite a while ago that Raikkonen had suggested a tour of the farming villages, but Gaokuoyu had only approved the idea a few days earlier. Raikkonen had gone, but an unsettling premonition had brought him hurrying back, and now here he was. "When I left for the villages, everyone told me they were going to arrive substantially later than expected. They being the visitors from the capital he had encountered moments ago. He had to admit, he'd never expected his former superior's esteemed daughter to be among the entourage. Of course Master Laken came, Raikkonen mused. Even the sea-sickening prospect of ship travel wouldn't have deterred him from joining this trip. With all due respect to the esteemed daughter, Maomao, Raikkonen found the idea faintly amusing. When he had been told that his former boss would arrive in about 10 days, he'd set aside the 5 days before that for his trip to the farming villages. But then, Raikkonen brushed off his overrobe, getting sand everywhere. He would have loved to wash properly, but there was no time. There was hardly even a moment to wipe himself down. His only choice was to take an incense cake and daub some around his neck. In these parts, incense usually meant either perfume or a cake like this one, and Raikkonen had only one of each on hand. One was a perfume that Gaokuoyu had given him as a joke, while the cake was one that he'd been hard-sold on while walking around town. That was his choice of incense today. A cheap product like this was perfect. Incense in the Western capital tended to have strong fragrances, so something cheap that didn't smell quite as much was ideal. He rubbed in just enough to mask the smell of sweat, and as a final touch he pasted a smile on his face. A smile was essential for doing business, his mother had told him. Never let it slip in front of a customer. Raikkonen wondered what Gaokuoyu would think to see him back so much earlier than expected. Things could get a little awkward if his former boss was there, but so it went. He cinched his belt and left the room. "It's been some time, sir," Raikkonen said, forcing himself to act completely natural as he entered the hall. Gaokuoyu and his subordinates were there, along with the guests, enjoying a light meal. Servants bustled in and out with the food. It was too early for dinner, but the offerings looked sumptuous all the same. Raikkonen recognized all the guests, naturally. He wouldn't forget them. The stubbly man with the monocle was Laken. His former superior, he would know him anywhere. Beside Laken sat his aide, Onsu. He had been around since before Raikkonen had served Laken. When Raikkonen had taken over, he distinctly remembered Onsu coming to him with tears of gratitude in his eyes. Onsu was a capable man, but he had an unfortunate tendency to draw life's short straws, a tendency to which he might as well have resigned himself the moment he found his way into Laken's orbit. Onsu saw Raikkonen come in, he gave a slight bow and whispered to Laken. Laken looked at Raikkonen with the same vacant expression he always wore. If Onsu hadn't said something, he would probably never have realized Raikkonen was there. Raikkonen was sometimes curious exactly what he looked like to the strategist. Laken beckoned Raikkonen over, but he wasn't sure if he should approach the strategist out of the blue. He looked to Gaokuoyu. The interim ruler of the Western capital waved at him from his place of honor at the table to go pay his respects. Raikkonen felt very awkward indeed. Onsu was looking at him with an expression that was hard to describe. He seemed to be wondering whose side Raikkonen was on. Between his current boss and his former boss, Onsu ought to have understood to whom Raikkonen's present position made him beholden. Laken, meanwhile, munched on some fried food, seemingly indifferent to the situation. The food first passed through the hands of a lady-in-waiting Raikkonen didn't recognize, who left only the merest scraps for Laken's consumption. Raikkonen might have assumed she was his food taster, but if so, she was keeping most of the meal for herself. Laken simply got her leftovers. He'd heard the imperial younger brother would be coming to the city, but at the moment he didn't see him. This didn't seem to be a public banquet. Laken had probably accepted the invitation without thinking anything of it, but Onsu's brimming eyes made it clear that he was supposed to have politely refused. Raikkonen, I want to eat that one bun, Laken said. At first Raikkonen had been sure Laken had forgotten his name, but it turned out that wasn't true. As for that one bun, he added, Onsu says he doesn't know which bun I mean, but I told him, That bun. Raikkonen agreed with Onsu. That wasn't enough to go on. Was that why Laken had called him over? Because he wanted a snack bun? Raikkonen searched his memory. You're talking about something sweet. Yes, sir. Of course I am. Does it have any filling? I don't think so. So it wasn't a red bean filling that made this bun sweet. Is it covered in sauce? Or do you dip it in anything? Ah, the sauce. Yes, there was a sauce. That white stuff, I love it. Raikkonen finally connected the dots. Master Laken. Are you talking about the fried buns from the Liu Liu Fandien? The name meant the Double Six restaurant. It was a place Laken had gone once, and several times after that, he'd sent Raikkonen to buy the buns. Sir Onsu. Fry up a mandarin roll, then top it with sweetened condensed milk, he said. I'm on it. There was a mandarin roll already in front of Laken. That must have been what put him in mind of the Liolio's creation. Fried bread with condensed milk? Sounds tasty, said the woman who appeared to be Laken's food taster, her eyes sparkling. She didn't seem much like your ordinary lady-in-waiting, another of Laken's finds, perhaps. Miss Chu, perhaps you'd be so kind as to taste slightly less of the food for poison, Onsu said. So her name was Chu. Onsu's touch of deference suggested she wasn't Laken's lady-in-waiting so much as someone who had been borrowed from elsewhere to fill this role. Oops. My bad, Chu said. If nothing else, this conversation proved to Raikkonen that Laken was still Laken. I can have the rolls prepared for your snack tomorrow, sir, Onsu said. I want them for dinner tonight. Please, sir, be reasonable. We're already at a banquet. Onsu's voice came out in a squeak. He didn't seem able to muster much more. Raikkonen looked on, sympathetic, well aware of how demanding Laken could be when he was in one of his moods. Onsu gave the former aide a dirty look. I see some things never change, Raikkonen said to Onsu in an effort to repair his mood. Indeed they don't. And you seem to have made yourself quite at home here in Dai West. Onsu had noticed Raikkonen's suntan and smelled the incense wafting from him. He'd never been the kind to wear incense back in the capital. He only did it here to cover the smell of sweat, but he refrained from saying so. He thought it would sound like an excuse. You'll have to pardon Raikkonen. He's only just gotten back from quite a long trip, said Gokuoyu as he took a bite of meat. Evidently he had been listening to their conversation. Oh, I see, Onsu said, paling to be so suddenly addressed by Gokuoyu himself. No doubt he hadn't expected the great man's conversation to turn to him. Is the food to your liking? If there's anything you want, I can have my chef prepare it immediately. You know the fried dough at the Liu Liu Fandien? Laken, never one to need asking twice, broke in. The people of the western capital would not, of course, know the fried bread of the royal city. Ho! Please, tell me about it, Gokuoyu said. Now that he had expressed a willingness to listen, it would be Raikkonen's job to explain. He felt butterflies flutter in his stomach. This seemed likely to be his lot for the foreseeable future, not a happy prospect for the ever-anxious Raikkonen.